Hello everybody, it's Bob Renham here. I'm from number 64 and we're about to begin a new community project on Piers Island, and I wanted to give you a bit of a background as to how this idea was born and why we were doing it. For many of us, COVID-19 has turned our lives inside out, including those of us who live on Piers Island. We're all hoping for the best, but the future is uncertain, and it is prudent to prepare for the worst. There's no magical solution to making COVID-19 go away. There's no treatment, no vaccine. It really is our behavior that's going to set the course of what is unfolding. COVID-19 will likely be with us for many, many months, perhaps into next year, although we're expecting the impact of this infectious disease to decline as the summer weather warms and the public health efforts succeed. But in all likelihood, COVID-19 will return in the fall. And it's for that reason that we're beginning to prepare a community garden. It's called the Victory Garden because at the very worst, if COVID-19 goes away, we can celebrate victory over COVID-19 by having a community feast. The purpose of the garden is to prepare rootstocks that can be used over the winter into the spring if food supplies should be needed here on the island. It's a virtue-based project where all of us who contribute the effort now to prepare the food for the future will do it in the understanding that the food will be distributed to those who need it most in the coming fall, winter, and spring. We're very lucky on this island. So many people have such a goodwill and strong commitment to the spirit of Piers Island. I'm very thankful to Jackie Charlesworth, who has donated a piece of her property. It's actually one of the nicest, sunniest, most fertile areas on the island to begin this Victory Garden. And to Philippa White, as all of you know, she's an expert gardener, and she's going to instruct all of us on how to create a gardening project that has the highest chance of succeeding. I want to emphasize again that this is the creation of a community resource. We are going to use the food to help people who are most in need later in the year. It's not a project whereby we're growing food for our own homes. And we have to understand that what we do here should only reinforce what Philippa is doing for all of us on the island in terms of providing us with sustainable food. So it's in that spirit. I'm going to turn it over to Philippa and others who will lead us through the program of how to grow a garden.
Hi everyone. First of all, I want to let everybody know that you have to dress correctly when you, if you're going to be a gardener. We all need straw hats and overalls. But what we're here for is to do a quick walk around of my garden, and I'm going to show you the tools that I use all the time so that you can start collecting your own from the garden shed, or if you need to order them. There's really only a handful of tools that I do all of the work with, and so you don't need to go and buy very much. I'm sure everything we need is already here on the island. So far I've done a little bit of research. This garden, this Victory Garden, is actually quite different than my market garden. My market garden is all about summer stuff, and it's about stuff that sells well. A lot of the things we will be growing, are things that are not all that interesting. I have a list here. We're going to be growing lots of beans, winter squash, potatoes, carrots, cabbage, kale, onions, beets, rutabaga, and Brussels sprouts. And if we can maximize the number of plants that we grow of those species, we will have stuff that we can process and store through the winter. We can harvest through the winter, and we can also put some stuff into cold storage as well. This is my winter garden, what's left of my winter garden. I've got lots of kale, purple sprouting broccoli, still have some leeks, so there's still lots to eat here, but what we don't have is what I don't do, and I haven't grown much of, is the root crops. So this is a new thing for me as well. So I'm just going to show you. Should I?
Yeah, go for it.
These are the tools that I use. This is my favorite watering tool. It's a little wand. The gun types don't work because they're too hard on the plants, especially the young plants. So these things are not expensive. Of course, we're going to need hoses. We're going to need some watering cans. That's from Home Hardware. It's fairly cheap. It's got a nice rose in it so that you're not drowning the plant with too much pressure. I use garbage cans, which I don't know if you can see, it's right in front. I store water to let it off-gas the chlorine because we have quite a bit of chlorine in our water. This is a harvesting knife. I use this a lot for cutting weeds as well as harvesting broccoli and so on. It's just a handy thing. Just a handy thing. This is my trowel. It's a really sturdy one. This comes from Lee Valley. It's quite expensive, but there's many. I mean, a lot of them I've picked up off of free piles around the island over the years. Even plastic ones, but they do break. We really only need, you probably only need a couple of things. One is a digging fork. Use this all the time. And a flat-edged spade. These can be sharpened if you're needing to cut through sod or really tough soil. When we get over to Jackie's, you'll see that these two pieces of equipment are going to be the most important over the next month, and you'll see why when we get there. So the key to what we're going to grow this summer and the success that we'll have will depend entirely on the soil. We do not look after the plants, the soil does. So our job over the next month is crucial that we build the soil as quickly as we can, because we are starting this. It's not too late to seed. We won't actually even be seeding until probably the first week of May. But we do need to build our soil so that the seeds have something fertile to go into. So the sorts of things that we need to be collecting now are leaves, horse manure, I have a lot of it, a little bit of seaweed, some wood ashes, any sort of organic matter we need to start accumulating and building a compost, heating it, watering it, covering it with black plastic. You'll see I've got a lot of black plastic here. This is all of my winter horse manure that I stack up and cover with plastic so that it becomes usable in the summer. So that's what the black plastic is for. We probably want to buy a roll of it, as heavy as it, what's that word? As stiff as the biggest ply, the thickest ply we can find. What else? Compost piles, they're kind of ugly. They can be kind of ugly, so they sort of need to be planned to be somewhere where they're not, you don't necessarily have to look at them. If you follow me, we'll walk over to the one that I'm working on right now, and you'll see what I mean by ugly. So this is a very simple compost pile. It's just a ring of wire. You don't actually need to surround it with wire, but if you've got dogs, then it's probably a good idea to have it enclosed. This will be my compost pile for this summer, and then in the fall when I'm planting garlic, it should be ready to use as compost when I plant the garlic in October. So the group needs to start thinking about compost piles and collecting whatever organic matter they can find, cardboard, newspapers. This is maybe something that could be done with an email rather than me speaking about it.
Well, good afternoon, Islanders, and you might say welcome to my garden, which is yet to become a garden. You can see behind me there's empty space. What happened was that I had Alec, who everybody knows, doing the backhoe in an area that had to be done, and then I thought he had spare time, so he came and cleared out all of the blackberries, which those of you who come to the apple pressing will remember made getting to some of the lovely apples hazardous. So that's all been moved, and all this land has been scraped clean. But of course, it needs work, And so I welcome you with open arms to do the work. Good luck with the fall planting, and that's really all I have to say.
Okay, so here we are at Jackie's. This is your project. I'm just gonna demo. The first thing that you're gonna have to do as a group is we've got some logs here that kind of have given us roughly a rectangle. We're going to be running the beds north and south, which is this direction. They should be approximately 4 feet wide. And the reason for that is so that you can reach into the middle easily. The paths in between will be as narrow as you can make them, but you have to be able to go back and forth comfortably. Once we start digging the beds, you do not walk on the beds. Soil compaction is one of the biggest problems with growing, so you do not want to walk on the soil once you've started digging. So I would suggest doing a string line of the areas that we're going to be gardening in, then figure out your 4-foot beds. They'll be going, I think we measured about 36 feet. What I do when I'm starting is you're going to stick your straight spade in and make your edge. So you figure out where your bed is going to be. I'm going to do like a mini one here. All right. Now let's say this is actually quite nice soil. So say this is now our 4-foot bed. Sorry. That's 36 feet long. Some people think you have to actually dig a bed. What we don't want to do is lose the soil structure, so digging is actually like turning sod over is not what you want to do, because you're bringing up what's so-called, well, the sterile underneath, and you're bringing it to the top, whereas the most active soil, the most nutritious and beneficial soil is in the top 4 inches. Because the top 4 inches is the most nutritious, we do not want to turn that under, because then we're just stealing or robbing nutrients from our plants. Okay, so we've got our little bed here. This is 36 feet long, it's 4 feet wide. We're gonna just stick our fork in as deep as it'll go, and we're just gonna rock it back and forth. And what we're doing is we're aerating the soil. We are not turning it over. We're giving the roots a chance. We're giving the roots a chance to grow deep into the soil. There's quite a bit of clay here, which is nice. That means it's high in mineral, which means it'll grow really good crops. What we are going to have to do is amend the soil with some compost and organic matter to try to retain the moisture and give the plants what they need. After that, what I do is I go in about 3 inches and I give it a twist. Okay, so we're not turning anything over. We're just loosening up the top 4 inches now, 3 or 4 inches. There's going to be some roots that will have to be pulled out and taken to the burn pile, but I think it's going to be not that difficult a job. If you do run into some big boulders, a digging fork is for digging, it's not for prying out boulders. You can see I've bent Jackie's fork already, so good idea to have like a pry bar or a really sturdy shovel that you can dig out the big rocks and the big roots so you don't bend the fork. Right, so we have a small section here. It's probably only about, maybe 10 feet by 4 feet that we're going to need to take the sod out. So the little wire worms that I had in my hand back at my place, they are very, very destructive in a new garden, and it's there's lots of sad stories about people who have plowed up fields, planted a garden, and found that they've lost 50 to 80% of it. And the reason is that the wire worms live in the sod, the grass sod. So if you just chop that up, you're not actually getting rid of them. So what I do, especially if I'm in a bit of a hurry, is I will actually remove the sod, and you can compost the sod somewhere else. Later on, you can return it to the soil with once the wireworms are gone. So to remove the sod is just a similar to what I was doing over there. Pick a little section. It'd be great if I dug up a wireworm right now. There we go. So there's the sod. This is really active it's really active area. This is where a lot of good nutrition is, but for the plants, but unfortunately that's also where all the bugs are as well. So I prefer to take the sod up, and then we'll amend the soil by adding compost. So that's how you get rid of the sod. There isn't too much, it's just a triangle here. One of the things we haven't talked about is irrigation. I actually do overhead irrigation. What might help us determine how big the garden should be is to get our oscillating sprinkler, turn it on, and that is your garden space. So that will help us maybe figure out how big the garden should be.